Ew, Meeple Syrup. What was that? It's my big fat fingers getting in the way. That's what that was. Welcome, everybody. It is me, Sen, and I am flying solo tonight. There is no Alara. There is no Erica. I'm the sole host today. But luckily, I have the wonderful Allison Chase here with me today. Hello, Allison, and welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Like we were talking before the show started, it's like amazing that we haven't talked sooner. And I know that we've all wanted to talk about fulfillment for a long time, and for some odd reason, we just never got around to it. And this is very timely because I think fulfillment is a question that's on a lot of people's minds right now. So,
Sure.
why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you? Where do you come from? What got you into gaming? And specifically, what got you into the business of fulfilling other people's games to get them into houses and homes?
Sure. So I'm Allison. I am a Florida native. I grew up. I grew up there in Florida and worked for a lighting engineering company doing project management work for about 15 years. When the company I worked for closed, I was looking for other project management work, and I found Quartermaster had a posting up that they were looking for somebody to come in and start up a project management department. So I did that. I joined the team. I did that for about a year, and then we started hiring other project managers onto our team, other account managers. And now I oversee that department. We've got I have a team of seven there.
That's cool. So you manage a bunch of account managers
Yes.
that handle all the kind of interpersonal stuff between, say, the publisher and Quartermaster, and then
Yep.
you're kind of coordinating them.
Yes.
So you're like a meta manager. You like manage managers.
Yes. I'm officially a program manager.
Yeah.
So yeah, I oversee them, so they get to work directly with clients, helping them with fulfillment. And my tie-in was that I Nicole. My tie-in was that I did project management before, so that translated really easily over into fulfillment. I have a little bit of a freight background too. When I started out my professional career, I was in freight sales, so I worked with like full truckloads and LTL, like domestic shipments.
Right. So you actually had like an actual skill set that was relevant to the job. Whereas a lot of time in games, we find that people just kind of fall into these jobs that are like kind of in their wheelhouse, but they don't have necessarily relevant experience. Because where do you go in the world to get like relevant experience for gaming anything? And I guess, if you have done a lot of shipping of freight and trucks and things like that, then you probably do have some relevant skills for the job of fulfillment. So can you define what fulfillment means, just so that the audience, we're all on the same page? What do we mean by fulfillment?
It's really the process of getting product that your clients bought into their hands. So for us, it can mean getting involved from the manufacturer. So getting goods from the manufacturer into like the local fulfillment hubs or the regional fulfillment hubs, and then overseeing from there the shipping, packaging, and everything, and ultimately delivery to the end customer, right, to our clients' customers. Sometimes we don't coordinate the inbound freight, and sometimes we're just getting stuff like from our warehouse into the customer's hands. But it's all of the transit. We liaise with a forwarder for and a customs agent for any of like the customs and clearance stuff that has to happen in each country. And then we have our own fulfillment center in Florida, so we fill like North America ourselves and rest of world, and we can ship internationally as well. And then we also work with other international fulfillment centers that do the same thing that we do. So they put all of the games and stuff in a box and ship it out.
Right. So if you're not directly doing the shipping of a product, you might be coordinating with other centers in other parts of the world to do that, and then being like the liaison for the the publisher, so they don't have to talk to 7 different fulfillment centers. Is that Can
Yes.
that be something? Okay, good.
Yep. That's
Because
exactly it.
I'm pretty sure Quartermaster is fulfilling one of my games like right now, which is great. Thank you. And I have no idea who's talking to who, but as long as somebody is managing all of that stuff, I am super happy. It's a great thing. We have a lot of people online right now. Price Johnson says good evening. Nicole gave you a big shout out and a lot of hearts, so that's pretty cool. Nicole's awesome. Adam Young says
Yes.
hello. Amy Bayo says hi. She'll be our guest next week, which is awesome. Cool. I hope she remembers that. Amy, do you remember that? I hope you do. Helena Capel is saying hi. Helena, if you look over Allison's right shoulder, you might see something there. And then Andrew Wolf is saying hello from the beautiful Pacific Northwest. So lovely to have everybody here. If you have any questions for Allison, please do put them in the chat. We'll get to them as we get to them. But we're going to talk today a little bit about all of the stuff around fulfillment. So we're going to start off with best practices and see where it goes from there. Again, if you have questions that Allison doesn't touch on during the best practices, put them in the chat and we'll get to them. And we'll probably, I'm sure, diverge from the set path at some point because there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. So let's start with just the best practices. What do you think are things that people should do when planning to have their product fulfilled?
I think it's important to start talking about, or at least understand, fulfillment plans early. Something that we run into often is people making commitments to things that don't quite make sense or don't quite pan out. So understanding like what your costs are going to be or what your fulfillment outlook is going to be. Sometimes people get really excited and add a lot of additional things into their campaign, a lot of stretch goals that end up being packaged separately, right? So
Right.
that increases the like the cost of shipping, and maybe a lot of people don't anticipate what those extra picks and size and packaging and things are going to mean to them. So it's really a bummer when we talk to somebody and they're like, "Oh, I launched my campaign and here's all the things I said I was going to do, and now we're going to do them." We're like, "Oh yeah," like that thing that's going to make things a little bit complicated, like a bunch of add-ons, or maybe like a really like the size of the box or the shape of the box.
Right. So some things that could have been worked out ahead of time, perhaps, or might have been left off of the campaign entirely because the number of people that you're, reeling in by setting out that bait isn't worth what you're going to have to pay for it in the end, right? So, for example,
Sure.
like when you say picks and things like that, you're talking about, are you talking about like hand sorting stuff to put into a different box and then sending the whole box out to the one
Yes.
person? Yeah. Okay.
So when anything that you have to physically pick up and put into a box, that would be considered a pick. So
Right.
If you offer a bunch of swag, like maybe you have, I don't know, lanyards and stickers and a bunch of extra things, maybe upgraded tokens, every bag, every box, everything you have to pick up and ship to a single person. First, it adds a layer of complexity, right? Because then instead of having to get one thing and ship it out, now you've got to pick like 10 different things. It increases costs because each individual thing you pick up adds costs. And then it can also increase the size of the shipment. So maybe in your head you thought, okay, well, I've got, a 2-pound game and this is what the shipping is going to cost. Well, if you just added an extra pound and
all of a sudden
extra
it jumps
things,
into
then it bumps you into the next weight class.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily think about when you're thinking about like even just like the weight of another deck of cards. It might just be enough to either change your box size, which then changes your manufacturing costs, or even worse, I think, is actually changing your shipping costs because shipping fluctuates like at weird times and weird values. And we've all heard those kind of horror stories of the case studies where it's a company that got killed by their own success, right? Where they offered so much and they did so well, and then some shipping price changed and they all of a sudden are paying, another $3 per box, and that was too much for them to handle because they didn't actually profit that much on the initial Kickstarter. So yeah, we've heard all that kind of stuff. What else adds cost other than just size and the physical picking? What are some other things that prospective publishers should worry about or think about that is something that they've almost shot themselves in the foot with when they offer it on a campaign?
A lot of people offer use the term customs friendly, so they offer customs friendly shipping,
Oh yeah,
and that's that's a little bit of a can of worms too, because customs friendly shipping means whatever you mean it to mean. I think it's not really an official term. It's sort of something that we all know and understand and gets like tossed around in the industry. More often than not, it translates to the backer doesn't need to pay additional taxes or duties in order to pick up their package from
right,
whoever's delivering it. So that can get expensive and costly, absorbing all of those things. And in order to achieve what the idea of that is, right? In order to achieve delivery to end users without having additional costs, you have to ship from within that region. So let's say you get your game manufactured in China and you promise customs friendly shipping to like US, Canada, Europe, UK now, so that's separate, or EU, UK, Oceania, and Asia, right? You just blanket say that. Well, you have to have all of those shipments have to originate from within that taxed region. So now you
right,
need to ship something from the manufacturer to somebody in Asia who's going to do fulfillment there, and somebody in Australia, and somebody in the EU and the UK and the US. So breaking those things up,
yeah. That's a
especially if you have,
logistical nightmare, right?
I mean, that's what we do. So that part's not too bad for us, but it can add costs that people don't anticipate,
Yeah.
because instead of shipping like one container and having one customs clearance, you're shipping multiple containers to multiple places.
Yeah. So do you handle that for customers, or do you expect customers to like line all that stuff up and then you will kind of take over as coordinator for all those things?
So like Quartermaster specifically, our model is that we're touching all of those things and handling all of those. We don't like maybe personally do all of them, but we're acting as the liaison and the point of
Right.
contact. So service for us is that you get a single person who kind of like manages and facilitates all of that for you. So we talk to a forwarder and handle any necessary paperwork to get set up with the local customs. Like in the US, you have to register with CBP, Customs and Border Protection, and you have to like become a registered entity in order to import things into the States.
Right.
Every agent, every country, every customs thing is just a little bit different.
Right.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Oh, by the way, just
it's
so
late.
everybody knows, it is late where Allison is. She is still being a global traveler, and it is quite late where she is. So the idea of Quartermaster and just any kind of fulfillment company, because this is not just the Quartermaster show. This is about fulfillment, right? We talked about that. That the job of the fulfillment company and the reason why, as a publisher, we might be paying a fulfillment company to handle all this stuff is because there's a lot of work in the background that needs to get done that we as publishers, or especially as designers who never publish anything anyways, don't have the expertise to do, where Quartermaster, like, this is what they do. This is their business. Every day they are filling out the forms they are, a licensed entity able to import, export goods and all that kind of stuff. So that's a big deal. And it's probably worth every penny to have that kind of headache removed from your plate as a self-publisher, or as a publisher, so you can focus on what you do, which is like marketing your game or designing games if you're a designer and a self-publisher. So I think it's really interesting that so many people don't think about this aspect of the making of the game. They just think of the making of the game and manufacturing, and then it's like, okay, now what? And a lot of those dominoes have to be set up before you ever press start on the printing. Otherwise, stuff can go real bad. Um, have you ever had any issues with a campaign that has gone, and you don't have to name names, but that has gone like so far south because of how they decided to run their campaign, that Quartermaster's like, we can't even deal with that. There's no way this is going to happen um, here. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's been so many fulfillment issues.
Um, I can't think of any. We've stepped in where things got so like sideways and out of control that we've stepped in on some and kind of taken back over or helped to course correct things.
That's good to know too, right?
Yeah. We've had conversations with people that's, along the lines of, okay, well, you made these decisions and now you're here. So unfortunately, we're going to have to do these things to get you out of here, and then we can start moving forward again. So sometimes you have to kind of unbury yourself before you can move forward. But I can't think of any that have been so hard sideways that we were like, yeah, good luck. I'm sorry.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to know that you have the expertise and the knowledge and the know-how of how to like pull people's bacons out of the frying pan if it's like sizzling too hot, right? Because there's so much that could go wrong, and obviously over the pandemic, there's so much that kind of has gone wrong through nobody's fault, right? Where it's gone all sideways for lots of people, like literally sideways, stuck in the canal sideways. But what else is there as a best practice for planning to get your product to your people? What other best practices do we have?
I would say understand what the tax obligations are in the places that you're selling to. It's important to do that before you launch. That's not something that we handle. We're not tax professionals or like equipped to give advice there, but thinking about like the sales tax or VAT or whatever the regional requirements are, I think it's really important to talk to somebody who's a professional in that area and understand what you're getting into.
Right.
It would be really unfortunate to get all the way through your Kickstarter, be ready to ship, and then have like everything come to a grinding halt because you're not registered in the region that you're going to fulfill in. So like in the UK, you have to be UK VAT registered in order to get goods into the country. Like broad strokes, you need to be registered. And I think I read something from one of our team today that it's taking 10 to 14 weeks for your registration to come back. So if you wait on that and now you're done manufacturing, your manufacturer says, hey, come get your stuff, and you can't get it, you can't ship it because you don't have the registration required, on the receiving end, then you're kind of stuck in limbo, right? And that's expensive.
Yeah. So for people that don't understand warehousing costs, and it costs like it's not insignificant to warehouse stuff because it's taking up space that they want to use for other things, right? That legitimately have to stay there. And so what Allison's saying is get your ducks in a row before you press print. Wow. Yeah. 14 weeks. 14 weeks is like a not insignificant amount of time. That's like 3 months. So imagine if you're paying any amount of monthly rates to warehouse 1,000, 2,000 copies of a game in somewhere. That's just lost money, right? That you're going to eat if you don't prepare ahead of time and think about that. So Allison, I know that you don't do this through the company you work for, but who would do these types? Are we talking about like accountants or lawyers or tax specialists?
Yeah, there are tax specialists. So there's a couple that have been recommended within the industry for like EU and UK VAT registration in the States, in the US. Like a tax accountant should be able to advise on that.
Right. And so the advice there is every company, you need to be registered as a seller in every country that you're trying to sell goods into. that kind of
Yes.
it?
Something like that. I don't want to say that you have to register in every country because each country's laws are different, right?
Right, right, right.
Some of the laws don't require you to
Yeah.
register there, but
So in
some
every
do. But
country that requires that you register, you should probably register.
yeah, if you're going to do business in a country, right? If you're doing e-commerce, you're doing some type of sale into a country. If you're going to do business in a place, you should know what the laws are of doing business there. So that includes markings too. So like in Europe, we have CE markings.
Right, right, right.
There's safety hazard stuff. I know in the States. I know less about Canada, but we don't.
It's very similar.
It's usually the U.S. and Europe that we run into challenges.
And does Quartermaster help with that at all?
In so much that when you so advising on what your markings need to be, no.
Right.
But if we're facilitating the customs clearance because we coordinated the freight and we're working with the customs broker to get it cleared, then yeah, we will. We had we'll work together to get through the clearing. So whether that's additional testing or additional paperwork, we've had to get some like Avery labels and print out something and stick them to every box.
Yeah.
And in the customs detention.
We had that happen. We had that happen to something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it was manufactured in not Canada. So it had to have specifically labeled on it where it was manufactured. So that was a bunch of stickers. That was like 5,000 stickers that were hand applied, that kind of thing. So
yep, and that can get expensive.
Yeah,
right. Like, especially if it's getting held in customs because that warehousing is quite expensive.
Yeah, it was interesting. So it was. I think it didn't happen to me personally. It was Jay. So it was, I believe, because it was books that he could actually take them all and just hand sticker them, and it was more like an on your honor system because it never happened before. He's like, it'll never happen again, and here's why, and here's my stickers, and I'll show you that I'm stickering them, and they said, okay, yeah, just take the rest. I think that's kind of how it worked. So he didn't have to warehouse it as much, I believe. I'm not exactly sure what happened there.
It depends on who the agent is too, right?
True, right?
Sometimes some people are will let the shipment go through and say, you're not allowed to sell this until you bring it up to code, basically.
I think that's exactly
but we
what
trust
happened.
that you will. And other places will just refuse to import it.
Which is also within the bounds of the law, I guess, right? So it is a big thing. Okay, so what's the next best practice? So we said talk to lawyers and accountants about registering. If you need to register, plan all this stuff so that even your campaign, so that you're not adding too many picks and too many little things that can add up to big costs for you. What else is a good best practice, you think?
I think barcoding anything that's going to be shipped during fulfillment is a good practice. Barcodes and UPCs aren't synonymous with each other. So I'm not saying that you have to purchase a UPC for every item that's going to be handled, but we require it in our fulfillment center. And I think most other places that use like electronic verification system, quality checking, scanning in and out. Most warehouses require barcodes. So if you plan on it early on, then I think that's helpful.
And why that makes your job easier, but why does it make my life easier as the publisher? Because I know it does, but how?
I mean, not just easier. We couldn't do our job without it.
Right.
It's like for us, we have a 50,000 square foot warehouse in Florida. It's huge, right? So imagine even if you only have
singular
one
game
or two SKUs, imagine your SKU, your item in a warehouse with a sea of other things. So we use barcodes to check items in. So we scan them in, right? It's our inventory management system.
Yes.
We say like this item's here, we're scanning it in and then scanning it out. For retail, you'll need to have them for sure, right? Because when a store sells, they need to be able to scan the barcode. But I think those are traditionally UPCs.
Yeah, usually.
So it's important to have one on everything. Something else that we see that people do is they recycle SKUs or barcodes, and
Yeah.
that's a big no-no also.
Yeah. So sometimes I think like if you're getting uh, barcodes and UPCs from like third party sites on the web, sometimes they might have already been used by like and then something that is not in circulation anymore, but they still can, depending on the
Oh,
system, they can register as they can be like they can still read as the old thing sometimes, which is uber confusing. So yeah, a lot of people are, okay, where do I get fresh UPC codes, right? Instead of these strange recycled ones.
yeah,
It
and
is strange.
we've seen some people too say like, well, this is the base game and
Yeah.
it has this barcode, but the Kickstarter version has foil print on the outside, but the barcode is the same.
Yeah. So
So
how
how
are
do I
you
tell
to
them
know that?
apart?
You don't know.
Right. Well, there's a green sticker on it.
Oh
Okay,
well, okay,
yes, but that doesn't help when I'm trying to scan, right? That's our quality check system
yeah,
too. You know, these are the items that went in the box. I'm going to scan them one more time and check to verify that the order was, picked
right.
correctly.
Because if you think about it, it's like, okay, so I sent out say 100 deluxe versions yesterday, and we're getting calls from the customers saying this wasn't a deluxe version. I paid for deluxe version, and you go back in your system, you go, well, I scanned out that UPC code 100 times yesterday.
Yep.
So in the end, whose fault is it, right? And obviously, a logistics company isn't gonna take the total blame for that because they're just working on what information the publisher gave them. It's like we have a saying in computer programming: it's garbage in, garbage out, right? If you give me garbage
Yep.
information, you can only expect garbage performance out of the computer. And so the same thing here is like if you're using retread UPC codes, even if they are your own UPC codes, SKUs, whatever, barcodes that now you're using for like the base game plus or the second edition, if the warehouse still has first edition stuff or stuff
Hmm.
that is the not deluxe version, but you all have them under the same code, there's going to be confusion. Splurge that extra $25 or whatever it costs to buy another code. Get that other code. It will save you hassles in the long run. I've heard, again, horror stories about this kind of stuff where it's like, yeah, we now have to reship and pay for the shipping to get the other game back or just leave it where it is. Sometimes it's cheaper to leave the game that you sent incorrectly where it is because it's gone out from a fulfillment center that's far from the destination, and the price to manufacture that thing and send it is, you know, less than the price to send it back, right?
Hmm.
So then that's just lost product, and we account for loss. Obviously, we on our P&Ls we have like 15%. In terms of how much do we expect to lose? Well, there's going to be something lost along the way.
Yeah, that's
But
important too.
yeah,
Like you want to build in a buffer. Sometimes that's another thing that some people do. They made 1,000 games and sold 1,000 games. Like,
they have
ooh,
no
yeah,
room for error.
you really need to build in a buffer. And then, yes, except that some of them are just going to be lost. We understand how important each one of these was, and it's your game that you designed with love and of years of development and manufacturing and things like that. So it's hard. It's hard sometimes to accept that like some of them are just going to get lost
Yeah.
uh, or
Like
yeah.
yeah, after it's been designed and sold, it is now literally a product that
Mhm.
has to get somewhere. And if we think about it that way and treat it a little more that way, then it's kind of I think it'll be easier for everybody to kind of like remove their emotion and ego from that box.
Yeah, that's tough. Like
It
I
is. I
get
get
that too.
that. Yeah. Um. What else? What else should we do? What else? These are great. What else should I do?
So you talked about garbage in, garbage out. Uh, Being honest with yourself and your fulfillment center about the size and the weight and the volume is really important.
Mm,
If you don't have the right dimensions of your box or you don't have the correct estimate of backer counts and you're talking pricing, then you're you're going to get inaccurate pricing. So it is difficult early on, especially before manufacturing. And I know from talking to manufacturers, specifically myself, that everybody's reluctant to give a final weight until the game is actually physically made. And you can't wait until everything's sitting at the manufacturer ready to go before you start talking quotes and pricing,
yeah.
obviously. So just know that if you give bad, or even just like estimate dimensions and they change just a little bit, that can just change the whole scope of things. It can mean a different size box that we use, or that you use, or that your fulfillment center uses. If you forget to tell people about items or SKUs, we've had that where there's kind of like surprise, like, oh yeah, no, there's
also this that has to go in the box.
Yeah.
No.
So SKU, SKU, stock keeping unit, right? It's each physical thing that you have to touch and sell. So sometimes things show up at the warehouse and there's a bunch of extra stuff that we didn't know was there, right? Like, hey, what's all this extra stuff? We didn't, oh yeah, those are the, whatever, those are the expansions or extra.
Okay, now we have to store those somewhere. We also have to pick them, and we also have to do all this stuff. Because, so when a pallet comes, it's just the raw games in boxes, and they're not in shipping boxes, in the game boxes with like shrink wrap on it. And if you haven't actually, if you have to repackage it, now we have another box, and we have the, all the stuff that goes in the box to keep it from jostling around. Oh, and now you want this other thing, and it gets up there. Like, it's a lot of stuff to think about. And so, I mean, I get it that people forget that these things are things we need to consider. But if you didn't think that they weren't things to consider, that's what you need to consider, is what I'm trying to say.
You don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah. And all these things add up, right? So, like, if I sold 1,000 expansions for this one game and that game as well, now there's 1,000 games that are sitting in the warehouse that didn't actually have a space reserved for them, right? We didn't account for that in warehousing. We didn't account for that in anything. And now everything changes, right? So what would you say, Allison, is like a good sort of margin of error, if we can even think about that? Like, we want to kind of overestimate. Do we want to overestimate and give you like, it'll be this many units and we add a few and the dimensions are this big and we add a couple millimeters to, like, how does that work? What would you say?
I think it's better to just give the estimates that you believe are accurate and let us kind of work through buffers. So that's me. That's like, if you're going to inflate your numbers and then you didn't tell me you inflated them and then I inflate them, now we're double dipping, right?
Right. True.
We tend to aim for about 10% overage to account for shrinkage. So, loss, damage, all those things.
Yeah.
So I think 10% is a good number. And then if you do sell through and fulfill everything and you have some leftovers, then you can sell off the additional copies or work with people to take them as review copies or whatever. And if you don't know what your dimensions are going to be, just say, I don't know what they are. It's okay to answer questions with I don't know, but this is my best guess, right? So if they're not final numbers, don't act like they're final. And then we can all kind of go in with that. I think that's a
really good idea, just to be honest and open, right? With the people who are trying to help you, Quartermaster, and any other fulfillment company, all they want to do is help you. They're not there. Yes, they're there to make money, of course, because you have to pay them for their service, but they're not there to gouge you, and they're not there to like totally rip you off. They're also not there to absorb your errors. So, you have to be upfront with them. And if you don't know, you don't know, and that's fine. They can work with that and give you an estimate. But then the caveat on that quote would be like, this is only an estimate until you give us, the real values once you know or are closer to defining that. Because you do want to, as a, publisher, know kind of what ballpark this is all going to cost you, because you have to price your units accordingly, and think about all those things, right? It's very, very expensive to do it. So it's not as easy as like just, it's going to be, $6 to ship this to everybody, because it just doesn't work like that. There's so many places in the world that you're shipping to, and everybody that touches it, they need a little bit of money to do that touching, right? So
and it's not just the cost of putting it in the box and getting it out the door, right? You've got the inbound, right? You've got origin customs, depending on how you negotiated your contract with your manufacturer. Sometimes you need to pay to get it to the port and get it out of the country where it was manufactured. Then it travels on a boat maybe, or a plane, depending on how you're handling things, and then it gets to the fulfillment center. So sometimes people look at just from the fulfillment center to the back and they're like, okay, this is going to be $10 in shipping. Like, I'll charge 20 15 or whatever, and I'll have a little bit of room. But all of those extra pieces that go in, that need to be factored in, it's really important to pay attention to all of those and understand what your total cost is.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a publisher a couple of years ago did a breakdown of the costs of their item, basically the
Yeah.
cost of their campaign. So marketing and manufacturing and design and everything. And shipping is such a big piece of that pie. I think a lot of people don't think about it.
It's a huge piece of the pie, right? So,
Yeah.
the standard advice in publishing circles is, take your manufacturing cost, take the cost that takes you to get that to your fulfillment center, and then multiply that by a percent, like 5, 6, 7 times to get your MSRP. So that's the rough thing. But the hard part is that landed cost piece. Everybody
Mhm.
kind of knows, okay, I can get the estimate from my manufacturers per unit cost, and then it's like, what is the landed cost? And you said it yourself. It's not just getting that box. Well, it is getting that box to the fulfillment center, but there's so much more than just the actual what's the freight. There's all those
Mhm.
other little taxes and costs of transporting it from the factory to shipping, transporting it from that place to the other place to the warehousing, and what's warehousing, and all these types of things that add up to be costs that, if you don't factor them in, your MSRP is going to be quite a bit lower, which cuts into everybody's profit margins, right? So it's this interesting thing where it's a great unknown, and it fluctuates so much, as we've seen over the last year,
Gosh, yeah.
that's like the big X factor, right? Manufacturing is pretty, you kind of know what you're getting into. That, oh, that game is going to cost about this much to make, and the pluses and minuses, it's not a lot. Like, you're not going to get something astronomically change on you typically, in the period that it takes people to manufacture a number of copy of games, unless you are manufacturing like a second print run, like 3 years later, that cost will probably change. But it's the shipping that changes, like on a regular, like daily almost basis, right? So
Yeah, and I
it's such
think
a hard cost to think about.
it is. And I think too that we're all used to seeing free shipping in places, right? Like Amazon and all of that. We're used to very fast and like free shipping. And I think people don't have a good handle on how much it costs to ship things. Or again, they're just thinking of that like fulfillment center to the destination.
Yeah.
And optics, I think, is really important with Kickstarters too. So I was just talking to somebody earlier this week who said that people were that their backers were frustrated about um, how high the shipping cost was. And I said, it's funny because your shipping cost isn't really any higher than anybody else's, but a lot of publishers, I think, subsidize part of the shipping cost, so they don't pass that on because
Yeah.
if you have a $30 game, it feels gross to pass on $30 shipping, but that might be the reality of all of the pieces that go together.
Yeah.
If you didn't consider any of those costs.
Yeah. And I mean, there's ways to do that, like hiding the shipping costs within the numbers.
Mhm.
So you can do that. I actually legitimately prefer campaigns that don't put shipping in the price and just charge me later. I am, but I guess, I don't know if I'm rare that way. I just don't want to pay for too much, and I don't want to pay for too little. I want to give you exactly what it costs to ship this thing to me at the time when you get it, because some campaigns, and there's manufacturing issues and whatnot, and it might be a year, 2 years later than we expected, and shipping prices can change, and I'm okay with that as a consumer. I just want to know. Um,
But like what part of shipping, right?
mhm,
Is it getting it from the manufacturer to the destination warehouse and then something from the destination warehouse to the end user? Because like if your game is already in Florida and it needs to ship to New York, then are you
yeah,
thinking shipping is just Florida to New York? Because you had to get it into Florida, right? You had to
yeah,
get it on a boat, you had
yeah.
to clear customs. So is that part of the shipping charge that you that you're, as a publisher, that you're transparent about, that you pass on to people?
So publishers usually don't. Like I said, they build that into the MSRP, right? So the landed cost of the thing is the cost of manufacturing plus all that other stuff to get it to the fulfillment center, and the shipping cost that they typically charge customers is that cost from fulfillment center to your door, right? That's usually what they're talking about, and that's what we see as the end user. We're not dealing with the rest of that. That is hidden within the MSRP. So
for us as a fulfillment center, it's just one bill, right? Because
yeah.
we're doing MSRP is a little tricky because that's more, I think, retail, right? And
Yeah.
if we're doing fulfillment of a campaign, we're sending out whatever the pledge value was.
Yeah.
So the pledge value and the MSRP might not be like the same number.
No, they very well might not be, because usually you're getting a discount off the MSRP. That's what you're told, right? Hey,
Yeah.
back us now and get this $100 thing for $70.
Yeah.
30% savings off the MSRP.
And not everybody goes to retail. Some people
are legitimately
go straight.
just Kickstarter,
Mhm.
and that's totally fine, and that's their model, and they thrive by it. And or they do retail, but it's not through brick and mortar. It's only e-retail or Amazon, or they're a reseller that way or something like that. So yeah, it's very different.
Yeah, so there's a lot of costs that are involved, and I think people want to be transparent and strive for transparency, but they're in a market where the people around them maybe aren't doing the same thing. So that when you come out and say like, "Hey, look, here's I'm being transparent with you. Here's the $30 shipping," everyone's like, "Whoa, $30 shipping? That's astronomical. Nobody charges that." Well, yeah, they do. You just don't know it because it's buried somewhere else, right? It's not the actual shipping amount.
Adam Young is saying. Oh, go ahead with what you're going to say. I'll read Adam later.
You mentioned shipping, charging shipping in a maybe like in a pledge manager later, like you pay for shipping later. That's the way to go for sure, because things
saves
change
a lot of
so
heartache
much.
and pain. So much heartache and pain can be, removed if you do that. And you may lose some customers who backed early and say, I can't pay that shipping, and that's fine. I think I'd rather have a happy customer because they were allowed to opt out of some shipping that they feel is exorbitant, versus somebody who, or versus your company going under. Like I said, people have gone under entirely because of shipping woes and logistical woes. So it's a thing. Adam says, that has always been a confusing one as a customer. I appreciate the perspective, high cost of shipping versus product cost. There's some interesting psychology in play, I'm sure. Yeah. So, I mean, when we have hidden costs, and when we have even just things like rounding costs to like 99, like $12.99 instead of 13, your brain definitely thinks differently about those two costs, even though it's literally a penny off. We also think very differently about strange prices like $12.98. Your brain will say something different about that than $12.99, and again, literally it's a penny off. But something about the coding of $12.98, or those strange prices that you see in like rollback prices at Walmart, like your brain knows that is a specific price for a specific reason because it's outside of the format. And then you go to like fancy frou-frou restaurants where they don't even put the pennies at the end, and it's just like 30. You go, oh, this is a fancy place. Your brain just thinks these things. We're cued to think these things by, like, it's not genetic. It's like societal constructs of how we are taught to think about these numbers. So yeah, lots of interesting stuff there. And Adam says, I won't lie, there was a $30 game that he passed on recently because the shipping was also 20 or 30. So Adam and I live in Canada, and that is always going to be something that we fear, is that the cost of the game is going to be less than the cost of the shipping to us, because sometimes shipping to Canada is brutal, even from within Canada. And I was just telling my friends the other day that I paid it was like 320 US or Canadian, sorry, for martial arts outfit that I needed. And then I got dinged for like $138 at the border for the customs brokerage because they ship through UPS. That is another thing. Don't ship through UPS if you can manage not to. The problem, I think, though, is because I did say to the company, they have a thing on it, like, do you want it by FedEx or USPS? And I clicked USPS thinking, oh, US Postal Service, great. I don't ever get customs notices from them because it's not the same. UPS has like brokers and stuff like that that do all this fancy stuff that costs money, apparently. FedEx too, um, DHL as well. So I think the problem was that the U.S. Postal Service is in such disarray currently that they thought, oh, we'll just get this out and get this to the customer on time, forgetting that it will cost me another like half of the cost of the whole thing to bring that into Canada. So thanks a lot, company from San Francisco that I will not name on air. But thanks so much.
It's those are the little hidden costs and fees and things that that sneak up on you and get you by surprise.
Yeah, and I mean, I think they get everybody. There's definitely games that it's like, I guess they're shipping it by UPS or DHL or FedEx, and I guess I'm gonna have to pay that extra $30 to get that game into my house, which is the cost of the game itself, and I've already paid shipping.
Yeah.
So, but then again, the thing is that like I never ever saw the game at like a game store, so I don't know what the retail of it would be in Canada. So there's also that. Like it could have been $60 retail. I only paid $30 for it, and this is the equalizer for that, which is probably really how it kind of works, right? Except you know that there's definitely stuff that is in Canada that isn't as expensive as, you know, the $130 extra that this company charged me for something. So I'm just saying there's some shady business in some of the brokerage fees that go on. Well, it's because you can't stop it. That's what I don't like about it, right? It's like, well, we have this product and we paid to do this, and if you don't pay us, we're just going to return it to the sender.
Yeah, they have a different brokerage service where they can kind of get things cleared in under their a lot of times under their customs registration, but then you pay an administrative fee. So we see that sometimes where people get charged a $30 administration fee, even if there's no customs like board games or duty free. But it's just like their processing fee. So yeah, it's important to know those things. And if you, depending on who you work with and what kind of services they use, you know, your fulfillment provider, if you use one, should be able to kind of navigate and explain what those costs are going to be. We all do things differently. So I know that we do.
Yeah, definitely get those questions asked. Today, Amy Bayo says she dropped off packages at USPS. The UPS truck was there at the loading dock. Help me, help you. You know, make this something I can understand. Like, why is the UPS truck at the US Postal Service? And I mean, maybe that's the thing. Maybe they're in disarray, so they are using UPS to do some of their international stuff or whatever. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know.
The opposite also, because the USPS, the U.S. Postal Service, goes to everybody's house, right? Because you deliver to every address, right? Because they're the entity that does that. So I know that FedEx set up a system with them. It used to be called Smart Post, and now it's called something else, like Ground Economy or something like that, where FedEx would move it the majority of the way, but then they would drop it off at the post office for the post office to make that final delivery. And I think this happens with Amazon deliveries too. Sometimes it used to. Amazon does their own now, but they used to drop off packages, and it was a great deal for the Postal Service because they were kind of getting an injection, and they were going to those addresses anyway, so that worked out, and that saved the FedEx driver from having to drive to everybody's house. But all of that kind of got upended a couple of years ago. It's almost been 2 years now. It's crazy to think. A couple of years ago, and everybody started staying at home and having to order things to be delivered into their home. That's another reason that we saw a spike in shipping fees, because instead of trucks dropping off large volumes of goods, like large stores where people would drive themselves to and purchase individually, now people are buying all these things online, having things delivered directly to their homes. And a lot of the courier companies didn't have the capacity, they didn't have the drivers to do that. So they used to go to businesses, and now they're going to like individual residences. And if you go to a business, right, there might be like, 100 companies in a tower building. You make one stop, you deliver to 100 companies, but now you've got 100 people spread out all over
Yeah.
that you're delivering to individually. So that really made things wacky.
Yeah. There's a game in there somewhere. There's a game in there somewhere. I swear. Adam says, just as a side comment, that education about logistics is probably a good thing for the public in general right now, because this isn't just affecting games. There are lots of people talking about shipping woes across all sorts of industries. And to put to bed some of the more interesting rumors and conspiracies that tend to be harmful, it's mystical mysteries to almost everyone. Even people who are in the business, right? And some people like filling in the gaps with their own imaginations. True.
Oh
True.
gosh. I mean, about specific campaigns, right? They like backers will sometimes chime in with their thoughts about why things are happening the way they're happening with the campaign, but broader spectrum. What's happening with the logistics, world, the supply chain in general right now. There's talk about bills coming out to put caps on or to regulate some of the shipping charges and things like that.
Yeah, it's getting exorbitant, right?
It's insane.
Well,
Containers cost like $5,000 this time. Well, maybe not this time, but last year that are between 20 and 30,000.
yeah, they're like seven. It's like 7,000 going up to like 21,000, almost 35,000. So we're talking like
Mhm.
like almost a 500% increase on the same exact container shipped to and from the exact same places. Why is there that big of a cost? And I mean, I know why, but does it warrant the huge spike, like 500%? I could see doubling it, but 500%, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Supply and demand as usual, right? But still. And then some
Yeah.
of it maybe isn't supply and demand. Maybe it's an artificial demand, or not artificial demand, but an artificial limit of the supply. So there's like all those magical, mystical mysteries, Adam. Like, are people withholding these things? And the funny thing is, like, we know that they're probably not. There was definitely articles about how there's a steel shortage in China because they need to build shipping containers, and so there's a steel shortage for building actually buildings in China now. So stuff like that, because the containers just weren't traveling back and forth the way they used to. So when you take a supply chain and you break it, stuff's going to happen. And we can never really predict what's going to happen because it depends on which end of the supply chain you're on, and both ends kind of get messed up real big time. We're currently running into problems with not just the shipping of stuff, of product, but now the shipping of the raw goods. So
Yeah.
that is quickly becoming an issue. I woke up one
Paper
morning,
is.
to a publisher saying, oh, not a publisher, or manufacturer saying, we expected 500 tons of, X grade paper or X grade card stock today. We had 0 tons. And so their machines, they had prepped all their machines, all the layouts were up. These things were ready to print and ready to run. And if you know anything about offset printing, anytime that the machine is not running is money lost, right?
Mhm.
And so they were expecting to have a load of card stock delivered the morning of to start their presses. They could not. So that is just everybody losing
Yep.
money. Now, of course, in the real scheme of things, it's more like you didn't make money. Did you really lose any money from not doing things? And so it's how you view profit and loss in some ways, but also time is a factor. Time is a thing, right?
I mean,
And
you
the longer
probably had
things
to
wait,
pay all
yeah.
those people to come
Oh yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
and not
To do
work,
nothing. Yeah,
right? So
yeah. Shut
that's
the factory
you.
down, and those people still deserve a wage, right? They didn't stop
Mhm.
this. So who loses? The company loses. And where does that loss get transferred? To the end customer, the publisher, and the ends at some point. The next batch is going to cost more or something like that, right? So all of these things, the stoppage or the disruption, I guess, of the global supply chain is really kind of nerve wracking if you're a publisher right now.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, I can't. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and then people are talking about what a store shelves going to look like at Christmas. Are there going to be games on the shelves at Christmas? And I mean, I think the answer is yes, there will be. It may not be the games you expected, right? It maybe it not be the games that you thought were coming out at that time. It might be stuff that maybe never would have gotten a chance because it got passed over. But hey, it's the stuff we have at the fulfillment centers or at the distributors, and they're good games, so put them on shelves. They might not be the hotness because that stuff's still in print or hasn't been printed yet or is stuck on the sea somewhere in a container. So yeah, it's an interesting conundrum to think about. In the end, though, I think there will be games on shelves. They just won't be the games you expected, and that's kind of maybe okay. I mean, just kind of take it as it is. Just go with it. Play those games too. They're worthy.
Thinking about the convention season that we're in, we just had we had three big conventions.
Yeah, in a
year.
row.
Oh my gosh, they were 10 days apart. Yes. I don't wish to repeat that.
Do not.
They a lot of the bigger companies bigger publishers that we normally see, like I'll talk Gen Con specifically. A lot of the bigger publishers that we would normally see at Gen Con weren't there this year. So a lot of the smaller publishers or even mid-sized publishers, I think, got a lot more business than they anticipated.
Right.
And for a lot of people, it was a really, really successful show. So like that right there is a testament to maybe not the things that we expected to see moving, but people were ready to buy things. And
yeah, people want to spend money. People want to buy stuff. People want to play games. And it may not matter that it's not the game that they wanted to get, but it may be a really good game. And like I said, I think that's okay. I think a lot of things that wouldn't normally have gotten a shot because they would have been overshadowed by, the next latest, biggest, I think from FFG or whatever, they're going to get a shot because there's some delays in the product chain, right? Amy asks, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Good.
Oh, okay. So Amy asks, do we think prices will go down for container shipments from China? Put on your magic hat there, Allison. What do you think?
We consult my crystal ball.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. There's some speculation that that things will start to go down after Lunar New Year of next year. So maybe April, May.
Yeah.
There's always a big spike right before Lunar New Year and a big spike afterwards because everything that got all bottlenecked going into headed into the new year that couldn't get on a boat and get out. There's another bottleneck that happens immediately after the new year. So usually we don't see things calm down until like April or May. But I don't know. I read about it frequently, and there's a lot of speculation. And with the legislation and regulation legislation that is trying to be pushed right now, that might help to alleviate things a little bit. But things are so backed up. Just trying to get out of China is still a struggle. Trying to find space on containers. There's manufacturers right now that are telling publishers, like, we need you to come and get your stuff, please. And the publishers are like, where do I take it? I can't get it on a boat right now. So there's stuff kind of stuck in limbo. And some people want to wait it out until prices drop. But again, there's not a whole lot of space to store things, right? That manufacturers aren't.
Yeah, I mean, that is finite
storage,
right? Yeah. It is really interesting. So I know there's definitely publishers on Facebook that are doing like freight sharing, where they're like, I have a thing that needs to go at this date. Do you have something that needs to go around that date? Let's share a container together to get stuff out. And that is a big thing. So there is a publisher perish kind of mindset that is not untrue, that sometimes you just need product to keep going. Doesn't matter how much that product might have costed you. You still just need to show a present so your brand still continues to, exist in the minds of people and stay in the zeitgeist, right? So there is something about that as well that is is definitely true. Whether or not prices will go down, I can't see them staying as high. People will just stop doing it. or maybe they won't. And maybe people will say, oh, well, if people are still paying this, then we're still going to keep charging this until there may be some regulation involved. Um, and it is kind of sad because it's almost like it feels like, almost like war profiteering. Like you're profiting off the misery of lots of people here because of the pandemic and what happened. But I don't really think they necessarily are. It is literally a supply and demand thing. They're not necessarily withholding stuff because, oh, COVID. It's just because of COVID, all this other stuff happened around the world where everything just sort of shut down and sets everything back. And things can't move as freely because of the initial understanding of how the disease was transmitted and whatnot. So we're in like fresh territory that we've never ever been in before. We've never had this scale of globalization. We've never had this scale of mass worldwide shipping, and we've never had a pandemic quite like this before. So, estimating that things are
Yeah.
going to get better, I'm a firm belief it will. The question is when, right? And
Yeah.
you're right about Lunar New Year being a thing of my people. It'll happen. It happens every year, and there will be a spike before, there'll be a spike after, and then there will be this kind of gradual reset. We'll just see where it resets to, and if maybe it'll reset to a slightly lower value, and every year it's slightly lower and slightly lower and slightly lower until it normalizes at some cost that is agreeable to everybody. And the other thing we could do is we could think about, does the price of a game increase? That has been a big talk. For so long, we're an industry that actually suffers from low margins already, where it is really not viable to be a publisher unless you are publishing in certain amounts and all that kind of stuff. And, you're cutting corners here and there, which makes for, it makes it a really interesting process. But what if you could also make a decent living while doing it, right? In a lot of ways. So I don't know.
A lot of people are waiting for somebody else to make the first move, right? Um, if you are the first one to increase your prices and nobody joins you, then you're just out there kind of on your own.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
people need to be realistic about how much things cost.
I think if anything, like I dislike Kickstarter a lot because of how much, weight it gives the voice of the consumer, which is not always the right thing to do. But at least it gives us a channel to the consumers to say, hey, here are very transparently the cost of a container. That's why the prices are going to have to go up. And a lot of people, when we did mind management, when Jay did mind management, it was like a $50 USD game, and now we're having to look at like 60 or 65, and everybody's saying like we would have paid so much more for that. It's like ridiculous the amount of stuff that went in that box and the quality of it. So yeah, we would have been glad paying more. We didn't know that then, but it always feels like if you're increasing prices, everybody takes umbrage to it. Like most people take umbrage to it. Of course, these are people who already have it at the $50 price. So I don't know what the people who might have to pay 65 are going to think about it. So anyway, yeah. Adam has a question here. I think he always worries about product being stored for a long time, especially things like double-layered player boards that seem awfully sensitive to climate issues, humidity. And when people are making do with less than perfect storage, bad things can happen. Yeah, I don't disagree at all. Humidity is a big thing. Mold, warpage, all that kind of stuff. We do account for 10 to 15% of loss, but if your whole product run is lost like that, it's happened to companies where everything was moldy because of a rush to ship instead of sitting through the wait time to dry in a humidity controlled environment, because those ships at sea are not necessarily humidity controlled environments.
Yeah, and sometimes people don't have like warehouse space. Sometimes manufacturers having to store them outside and maybe put them under tarps or something like that, or depending on where it's headed and when it's in transit and where it is. Sometimes things just have to like sit outside for a while. So yeah, you're thinking about stuff like being in a port where it's humid and even if it's under a roof, it's possible it's possible for like moisture and stuff to seep in. So
Yeah.
that might be another reason why manufacturers are eager to have people pick up their things as soon as they're ready. This whole industry is very much based on just in time, right? We
Hmm.
don't stockpile and
No.
hoard games for like later release. Everything is shipping as fast as it's possible.
Yeah.
Like everybody, when did it land? Okay, let's get it in stores. Let's get
Yep.
it out to backers. Everything
Like
moves very
even the
quickly.
biggest companies like Hasbro, they're still fairly just in time. They're not doing a lot of super large print runs. I mean, they are, but they're all that product is gone the day that it's actually shipped. It's like shipping right to where it needs to be. So
Yeah.
yes, cool. Well, we've talked for over an hour, Allison. Look at
Really?
that. Yeah.
Oh,
So
look at that.
it must be like super late where you are. Any last minute questions from the Meeple Gallery? Anybody out there have any last minute questions for Allison? I think we've covered a whole lot of ground here. But I know there's even more. Just because Allison and I were talking before, and there's like the common question of, when am I too big that I need a fulfillment company? Stuff like that. These are good questions for small publishers, right? So I think the answer to that, from what we talked about before, just so we can do that in like a couple seconds, is you need to know yourself if you have the desire and the space and the wherewithal and the time to mail things out yourself. If you can do that, you can probably save yourself a whole lot of money, but you're also going to have a lot more headaches, right? If you are doing your own fulfillment, that's a lot of time and effort to do that. And a lot of small publishers in the beginning saved themselves a lot of trouble by just selling within a country. Like, I'm just selling to the US, that kind of thing. Because I'm in the US and that's all the shipping. That's the only place I'm shipping is to these couple of zones. Like, it may be Canada, the US, and UK. That's definitely, actually, that's exactly what we're doing right now for a product with Hunters. So Exquisite Crime is just shipping to English speaking countries at the moment because of logistics. It's actually a logistics issue. And a manufacturing
Yeah.
issue. So there's a lot of things that are changing because of the problems that we're having. We didn't do a very big, all languages and all versions. And you can tell that in our campaign. Like, we took 3 or 4 days to fund when normally a product by Hunters, funds in a day. It's because we've changed the model and because we had to. There's just no way we can deliver this within decent timelines without manufacturing in America and without shipping only to a few places. So it's
That's
sad, but also good. It's a good litmus test. We're okay with it.
that's smart. A lot of people want to be everything to everybody, right? And sometimes it's tough to make that decision, but it
Yeah. And you feel bad. Like, you feel bad when there's like fans in other parts of the world who's like, oh, I would have totally bought that. Okay. And you can, if this is successful,
yeah.
because we will work to do that once the worldwide issue changes. Like, because we can get stuff easily into Canada from the States, fairly easily anyways, like, that's a no-brainer. We can do that. And because it's the same language, so it's only printed once, right? And then because it's the language, going to the UK is not so bad. So there's ways around these things from a publisher standpoint. It just means that there's going to be, limited. It's going to be limited, is what it's going to be, and that's how we've chosen to do this one. And if that persists, I hope it doesn't persist, because I'd love it to go everywhere. But for now, that's the choice that we've had to make in order to make it a viable product from our standpoint anyways, right? So there you
Yeah.
go. There you go. So when do you need to hire a logistics company? When you really have no clue what you're doing, which is me. I would 100% hire a logistics company. Or when you don't have the time and energy to do all that, and you'd rather focus on maybe doing something that you should be doing, like designing the games or promoting the games and marketing the games, because no other company is probably going to do that as well as you. But
Yeah.
other companies can do the logistics part, and in fact, they can probably do it better than you can. So
And
there
it's
you
not
go.
just the shipping to like customer service and all of the,
Yeah,
there's all sorts of other
yeah,
parts of it that you can have help with.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so if people go to qmlogistics.com, they can find out all about Quartermaster Logistics, and Allison's email at Quartermaster Logistics is here. Allison.Chase at qmlogistics.com. If you want to talk to me, you can find me on Twitter at Senfeng Lim. Erica is at Erica Buyuris on Twitter, and Alara is at TT Void. They'll be back next week. Well, Erica will be back next week, and then Alara will be back probably in the new year. Also, follow us at Meeple Syrup on Twitter. And if you want to support the show with a monetarily, yeah, if you want to support the show monetarily, check out patreon.com/Meeple Syrup, where you can help keep the lights on. And as we go back into con season, we're going to start getting really interested in how we can use the money that we've raised through the Patreon for the good of new designers, especially designers who are from marginalized groups. So that's the goal. Allison, do you have any final words, any final advice for the people?
Just talk to somebody or talk to people and use resources around you early. We're happy to talk. There's plenty of people who are very active in the industry. Amy has been really active in discussions and communications, and I would just recommend that people start talking and planning about things as early as possible, and just know that if you don't know how to do something, hire somebody that does.
Yeah, and I think that's a great
not just
advice.
fulfillment, all the things.
All the things. That it's really important to talk to people early, because an early conversation can save you later heartache.
Mm-hmm.
And broken banks and empty wallets. It's true. And so next week, the one and only Amy Bale will be here. She'll be here talking about her games, Rabbit, and all the conversation games that she's doing, which are great. And she'll also be talking about hope, which I think we all need to think about as we go into the new year, ready to look at 2022 in hopefully a new light. We're not quite at the end of 2021, but I'm going to say let's start thinking about the new year. 2021 was kind of a write-off, so let's start thinking about 2022 early, so we can get out there and maybe have, maybe see you at conventions, right? That kind of stuff. Excellent. On that note, we'll say good night and goodbye to everybody. Good night and goodbye. Thank you, Allison, for calling in from far, far away, late at night.
Yes.